Hey everyone, good afternoon. We are very excited to be here. Okay, we're not recording, so hold on.
All right,
Take
there we
two.
are.
Now we're recording. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. We are really excited to be here this afternoon. My name is Michelle Kane, and I am the director of the SD CEO. And we are in our new world of work, right? We're here, we're live, and we're excited to be sharing some really cool information with the idea that all of our small business owners, that we think differently. This is a time to redefine who we are as businesswomen. It's a time to redefine who we are as business owners. And we're super excited to have Dr. Rachel Headley with Rose Group International here today. Before I turn it over to Rachel, and she is going to talk about working with NASA, and it's not aliens though, right?
Not at the moment, not yet.
The moon, it could be, we don't know. Hey, just a couple of things that are happening in the world of SDCEO. On Tuesday, June 9th, we have at 8:30 a.m. in the morning, we're going to have a Women in Networking breakfast, virtual Zoom, get together, connect with other business women in South Dakota. There is no cost to charge or no cost to attend. Women in Networking is a membership organization, but during this time, we are opening up all of our Zoom networking opportunities to anyone who's interested. So you can check us out and join us. So please check our event page. And that again is at 8:30 on Tuesday the 9th. At 10 o'clock, same day, on the 9th, we have our weekly PPP and EIDL loan Q&A. If you are a small business owner and you have applied for an EIDL advance, that's the grant, or the EIDL loan, or the PPP as part of the CARES Act, there were some changes. Just Wednesday, there have been changes to the PPP, so you need to know about it. And we are here to share that. SBA's Pam Selberg joins us every Tuesday at 10 o'clock Mountain Time. That's also in our event. So please come and join us. It's totally open Q&A. You have your opportunity to get all your questions answered. The other thing we're doing, it's today here, 5 p.m. Mountain Time. Have you ever wanted to know how to use Zoom's breakout rooms? How do you use some of the more advanced features in Zoom? Well, you can join Mela and I as we are doing some tests, and you can be our guinea pigs. We're going to shove you in breakout rooms and make you talk about stuff, and we're going to make you do polls, and it's going to be at 5 o'clock, so we are totally open to happy hour. But we would love just as many volunteers as possible. It's just going to take about 10 minutes, but if you're interested in checking out breakout rooms to see how they might work for you and your business, come in and play with us here. So we're going to be posting that after our discussion with Rachel, and you're invited to join us. So I am very excited to introduce Dr. Rachel MK Headley. So she is co-founder and CEO of Rose Group International, co-founder of IX Leadership, and I just happen to have my planner right here. Who would have thought that 2020 would be like this, right? I know, it's amazing. But I love that. I use that all the time.
I know.
And she's also a TEDx and fabulous keynote speaker. Rachel is doing a project management session for our Women in Leadership series, our number 7, sponsored by Core Mining, which starts next week. We're super excited about that. And the reason I asked Rachel to join us today was, as we're connected on LinkedIn, I saw that she and her company can now do work with NASA and the federal government. And I wanted to know more about that. And I wanted Rachel to come and share her experience, some opportunities that all of us as business owners should be considering and looking at, and a little bit about what she's learned. So I'd like to turn it over to Rachel. And if anyone does have any questions, please just jot those in our Facebook event, or excuse me, our Facebook post, and we'll ask Rachel of that. So Rachel, take it away.
Well, thanks so much, Michelle. It was really fun. I got a lot more love off that post than I imagined I would. But I think part of it is because everyone is, we're all looking for business continuity. We're all looking for new opportunities. We're all thinking about how to position ourselves and if we need to pivot, or maybe they're big pivots, or maybe they're just baby ones. And so my background is I came up through the satellite world with image analysts is how I started out right out of college. And I moved up through my top job I worked for the USGS NASA Landsat satellite mission as the operational science officer, which was one of the greatest honors of my life. But when I left that role and I went into making my own company, my own way, what I found out was I thought, well, I'll just be able to like pivot and start working for NASA or start working for USGS, who is the operational arm of the mission, or perhaps any other federal agency. I actually did some work with NOAA, the weather people, which we love around here right now because they tell us about all the severe storms we're going to have. But what I found out was there's a couple really important things to know about working for the federal government. And I know that Michelle has some really great resources to the SBA that she can share about getting you signed up for that. But before you even go down the path, it's really important to understand kind of what working for NASA specifically looks like. And so one of the things that Michelle and I talked about was, well, what does that even look like? Or how did you even decide? And so, well, first of all, I have some level of comfort with NASA because I worked in one of their programs. I actually interface with a lot of our research scientists for the Landsat mission were actually NASA scientists in other disciplines. So I understand the structure of NASA and who they work and how they work. But what I didn't—
Hey, Rachel, what's the Landsat? When you've mentioned that a couple times, what is that?
Yeah, well, the Landsat satellite program is an Earth-looking satellite. So it's flying around the Earth at 19,000 miles an hour. From the pole to pole. So when you look up at the night sky and you see satellites going from north to south or south to north, then those are polar orbiting satellites. And so they're often taking pictures of the Earth. Other satellites, they take pictures of deep space and that sort of thing. And so what we do, though, you have seen Landsat data because one of the things that I did when I was with Landsat was I brokered the deal with Google to use all of our data for free. So all the baseline maps on your phone, they're all Landsat. So if you zoom out to like, say, the regions, or not necessarily your neighborhood or your city, but like, let's say like in the Northern Hills for spearfish, that is Landsat data you're looking at. So you have seen the data that I worked in the program for almost 20 years on.
That's cool. So is that like Google Earth when we look up those?
That is Google.
Awesome.
Yep, Google Earth's base map is Landsat. So
that's interesting. No, thanks for it, because I've heard that term before, but I just wasn't sure what it meant. So thanks for sharing.
It's super nerdy. It's also in a couple movies, like there was like a Transformer movie that talked about Landsat as the mission that saw the incoming, aliens or whatever. So I was like,
I knew aliens were going to be part of the session.
Right.
I feel good now.
I was like, that's not really what it is, but it is cool that we got to mention. So
yeah, no, that's great. No, thanks for explaining that.
No, not at all. So that is one hurdle, as you know, Michelle, for a lot of women, where we feel like we have to know 100% of a thing before we're willing to kind of jump into it. And that actually counts against us sometimes. So because men don't need to know much at all before they'll like, sure, I can do it. So that's a really interesting gender difference. And so for those of you watching who might not have any, experience or deep knowledge of the agencies, that's why I thought I would give you a little bit of comfort, because honestly, contracting directly, Rachel and Meg's my co-founder, our team, Rose Group International, us connecting directly with NASA is probably not going to happen for a very long time. And the reason that is because they have massive, massive contracts, like $100 million plus, giant. And so, so the trick is if, and the other thing is they also evaluate you on your past government performance. So past performance, it's sort of like getting your first job, right? Everyone wants experience, but you can't get a job to get experience. So in the NASA world and almost all federal contracting, you need past performance credibility before you even get a look. And so what you have to do in NASA anyway, is you have to actually subcontract to a giant contractor. So think Boeing or, Raytheon is a little bit of a nerdy company you might not know, but some of these massive federal contractors that, let's say, they manage the entire, like NASA, Houston at NASA, let's say, that's a NASA facility, but most of the people that work there are not NASA employees. They're, let's say, Hughes employees, or they're Raytheon employees, or they're a federal contractor. So then what you do, or what I do, is I want to be able to contract with that contractor. So I'm a couple steps away from actually being a NASA contractor. But the great thing is, if you subcontract to those giant contractors, you get past performance on record. And that's how you start building your past performance, so you actually can get bigger and bigger contracts.
So this is an example too, because we have helped women in construction be a subcontractor, because again, you need experience to basically bid on certain projects, right? And so it's really the same thing. So you're looking to then contract to subcontract to one of the major contractors who's working directly with NASA to build that, almost that book of business and that book of experience.
That's right. And once you get into these big contractors, of course, and these are the folks that are $1 billion+ businesses. They not only run the Houston Space Flight Center, but they have massive research and operational arms in 7 other countries in the world. And so not only are you building your book of business as a federal subcontractor, you're also exposing that giant company to the gifts that you have to offer and the services you provide. And in our case, what we provide the federal government is we do leadership training, team building, team dynamics challenges. A lot of times they have a reorganization and they need someone to help come in and guide them on human side of work. So that's our specialty. And of course, you can imagine that NASA, being billions and billions of dollars of appropriations, they don't want to hire me for a sub 6-figure contract. So they count on their contractors to bring up people of our size into the company. Now, someday they're going to hire me directly, but for right now,
of course,
that's how we get started. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So in this new role, then, are you going out and pitching contractors?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you do within like the federal contracting database, or how do you actually, because now it's like you're actually pitching these larger contractors to hire you as a subcontractor?
Right. So you're right. It is a little more complicated than, like, say, in the construction business, because if you get hired as a sub, then that's the only person you have to answer to, is that contractor, is the prime. So in federal contracting, it does get a little more complicated. So you have to be registered with the federal government, and that's why Michelle and SBA has a lot of resources to help you, because there's a lot of hoops to jump through to get registered as a company that can work for the federal government. There's special registrations you have to have. There's codes you have to apply for. You have to decide what your NAICS code is, which means this is what we do. Our NAICS code is like 591611, which means we're administrative and general management consulting. So that's our NAICS code. So you have to kind of get the lingo. You have to know how to do it. It's a very long and annoying process. So you have to really be in it for the long haul. You can't just decide tomorrow you want to get a contract. It is probably a few months at least down the road before you're even positioned to have the opportunity to sign a federal contract. So it is a long-term play for most people. So then I have all of these, the Rose Group International has all of these codes and approvals and authorizations to work for the federal government. But to your point, now I'm actually not even pitching them. I'm actually pitching the big prime contractors. But if I don't have this federal side figured out first, then they won't even look at me, because I'm not eligible to be a sub to them. Because what they're really looking for, the only reason that they hire people like us, is that they need a certain percentage of small business, women-owned business, veteran-owned business. And so in the USGS, when I was working there, it was, I think, 20% of the total contract value had to be subcontracted out to a small business of some kind. And so for me, that means that they are always looking for, okay, I need some training. We could subcontract that. That's not a technical thing. I don't have to have the engineering knowledge. I don't have to be embedded in the organization. I can come in for 3 months and then leave. So that's the kind of thing they like to subcontract. So that's the other piece is, what are you offering? And is it something that can go against their subcontracting requirement?
And that's a really good point too, because particularly with our consultants, so our, women-owned small businesses who are consultants, that sometimes they may not be thinking about offering their services to some of these larger organizations, such as NASA. But
Right.
they require it, and that is a great fit because it could be just a short-term project, which is a perfect fit for you. And then you're building again that book of experience to, move up to a prime at some point.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate goal, although not necessarily. I know a lot of small businesses that have made a ton of money and still stayed under the small business cap of 29 million or whatever it is right now.
Right, right.
You can make a lot of money doing small work for federal contractors, and not get out of that small business. That is a bit of a trap for some companies where they're right on the cusp. They're making $20 million a year. If they get another or bigger contract, they actually bump out of that small business world. And then they're kind of disadvantaged because now all of a sudden you're a big company, but you're one of the smallest big companies competing. So
Right.
it
So
is
it's like big fish, little pond,
right.
little fish, big pond. It's like where do you play?
But once you have your past performance, your book of business and your history, your resume, as it were, then you're a lot more well positioned. So for me, like Department of Defense, as an example, the Navy, they actually directly contract for leadership training with civilian organizations. So there are, like NASA works with huge contractors, they sub to me. I can apply to say the Department of Defense, Navy, to do some of their leadership development. However, I have zero book of business. So even though I'm eligible to apply, I never get chosen. And not because we're expensive or not right. I have some experience in federal contracting from the client side, from the federal employee side. So I know how to put together the proposals and how to build a budget, and my project management, I would be lost without it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not that I'm not doing a good job of applying, it's that I do not have past history. So as far as they know, would they rather, same with you, would you rather hire someone that has done it 4 times and you can call somebody and say, hey, was Rachel a crazy person or is she okay? And so so what I decided was to stop doing the Navy kind of stuff and then work as a sub to get my past performance up so that Rose Group would actually start to get a real look from the contracting officers who make these kinds of decisions.
And thanks for explaining that. That's very interesting. So are these positions, can you do them remote? Or do you, is this something that you would expect maybe you have to go to Virginia for, or somewhere else to actually execute the training as part of that contract?
Yeah, it depends on what it is. So for us, what we normally do, let's say we're doing a 6-month leadership development training for the Navy, as an example. Well, we fly in for that first week of intensive 5-day training. And a lot of times what the Navy has already decided, because they do it all over the world with all of their officers. And so they have a plan for you. And they have to balance their people's time with the value that they're getting. So what happens often is they'll have a intensive week where we get in the classroom and we do a lot of training. And then once a month, we might have a video call. And then at 6 months, we have an in-person meeting. And then after a year, we have a graduation that's in person. So they usually dictate the schedule. So you have to take a look at that and recognize if that's something that you're comfortable with. The other piece I've seen, though, because of the pandemic, is that often you're asked to submit not only your training plan, but what you would do, how you would modify it if you did it remotely. So they are asking for some of that stuff now. Of course, the other great thing about the government, frankly, is they also recognize that contractors don't work for free. So there's a lot of businesses out there who want to try to convince you to include something for free or throw me this thing. And I know we said this, but hey, it's the pandemic, so let's do this instead and just do it for free. The government knows that is not how it works. The government pays you for your time and they pay you on an agreed upon amount. So if for some reason you have to pivot and do this thing virtually instead of in person, they recognize that it costs you more. They expect you to charge them at a different rate or at a different way, and you work with their contracting officer on that. So the great thing about federal contracting, it is all in writing. It is very contract heavy. So that's the other thing. Talk to Michelle and her SBA support, because the kind of contract you sign is important. We could talk about that for hours, and I'm sure you've had some of those trainings. But that's the important thing, is they are reliable. They pay their bills. They don't ask for things for free. And so it's really quite nice if you work with a lot of other clients that you know that that's not always the case. So that's one really bonus about working.
And the federal government is spending money right now, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, federal government gets their appropriations at least a year in advance for sure, but they usually have a 3 to 5 year appropriation schedule. So their fiscal year starts October 1st, which is also a very important date to know. So October 1st, they get their appropriation, and you might hear in the news that they didn't decide on a budget and all that, but they're still spending money. There's rules about how they do that. So October 1st, they get their money, and they almost always have, they have to have a plan of how they're going to spend that money. So the cool thing is, if they've planned a leadership training session once a year for all of their new officers, they are probably going to do that no matter what COVID happens or whatever. And so they're more reliable. Like a lot of times you sign a contract for year 1 and then 2 option years. So contract 1, if you do a great job, then you automatically get rolled into an option 2 or an option 3 year. So often 1-year contract rolls into a much bigger contract, which is fun. And the other thing that's important about the October 1st thing is that, as you know, as a business owner, you sometimes don't spend all the money you plan to, or something doesn't happen, or the pandemic happens and something doesn't get executed the same way. So at the end of the year, you have some money to spend. Now, in the military, they don't care. They have year to year, they can spend money, it doesn't matter. But most civilian agencies like NASA and USGS, NOAA, and all the other ones, Department of the Interior, they have to spend their money by September 31st or they lose it. They have to give it back to the Treasury. So what happens is, about July every year, they start not panicking, but they start advertising opportunities because they want to spend money. Because what happens is, if I sign a contract with, let's say, the Department of the Interior on September 1st, then that counts for this year's money, even though I might not execute that. Maybe I go in next April to do a leadership training. They want to get me signed in September because that spends this year's money, and they get next year work on this year's money. So it's a little bit complicated, but you'll see that there's a lot more federal contracting for small business at the end of their fiscal year, which is, July, August, September. So
that's a really good, that's a really good tip. And what's interesting is, with SDCO, we are partially grant funded by the Small Business Administration, which my fiscal year also starts on 10/1 as well. Actually, ours starts like 9/30. It's like it ends 9/29 or whatever.
Right.
But,
and go ahead.
No, but I have to spend all that. And if we have not spent all of our federal dollars, like to the penny, we have to deobligate it. And we've had to do it because sometimes you just can't get absolutely perfect. And it's typically not very much, but it's so hard to give it back.
Well, and what also happens is, let's say that you didn't spend 10% of what you have obligated. Well, what's going to happen next year? Oh, Michelle, you didn't need all that. Yeah, you didn't need all that money, I guess. So we'll just not even give it to you next year.
Right.
So they try to spend that money, but they also have to close the books, and you probably have this too. So they have to they stop spending about early September, sometimes late August, because they have to start actually closing the books out. And so that sort of July, August is really the sweet spot.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. So what about a small business owner that might be out there running marketing firm or a PR firm, or as yourself, a management consultancy? What's kind of their first step in deciding if is federal contracting with NASA for me, or perhaps federal contracting with another agency? What would you suggest or recommend to a small business owner?
Well, the first thing I would say is you really don't know where the opportunities are. So I always like to position myself to be available for opportunities. So like right now, I do not have a contract with the NASA Prime, but if I didn't have all my ducks in a row, I couldn't do that. So even if someone called me today or called me last week and said, hey, I've got this great opportunity, you need to apply for this right now, I know this person in this place and they need you, I would have to say, I'm not actually qualified for that. I'm not positioned to take advantage. So my recommendation would be, if you have any interest in this at all, get your federal authorization to work as a business with the federal government first thing, because that takes a little time. If you go out and you get right, and
that's where I was just going to jump in there. Just if those of you who are considering that, this is where our SBA resource partners as SDCEO, we have other partners that really can walk you through this. And it's as simple as, and I'm thinking it's like sam.gov, even though it's not it. I think it's a new website where you can start to see some of the opportunities.
Get you there. Yeah, that'll get you there.
Yeah, but we can, at least start the conversation to see what kind of opportunities are out there. But be thinking about it. But just because you could be a one-woman show with your own consultancy, there could be opportunities, as Rachel is a great example of her business, moving in, to this world of federal contracting. And again, Rachel has experience working with the federal government in her past, but you don't have to. And that's why your SBA resource partners are here to help guide you through this. And a great example, Rachel. Go ahead. I just wanted to, throw that out there and plug.
No, I'm glad
we have
you did.
Resources to help.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you did, because the other thing that I was going to say that relates directly to that is, don't pay somebody to do this for you. There's a lot of people out there. I've been in the registry, in the sam.gov registry for, I don't even know, 8 years. And I still constantly get emails from, other consultants who want to pay to update my record, or you're going to expire in 3 months. You better get on it, or you better, there's just a lot of people trying to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to if you're getting into it to explore and to try, don't spend a lot of money. Michelle has resources that can help you navigate that world. And then the other thing I would say is, once you get that approved, then you go to sam.gov, or you can go to sam.gov right now. And what you can do is you can search on marketing, and it'll bring up every marketing opportunity for the federal government that is there. What isn't there is the prime contractor opportunities. So if you want to work, let's say I want to work at NASA Houston Space Flight Center, and what I would do is I would go to Houston, go to their website, find out who their prime contractor is, and I would reach out to their training and development or HR person, and say, hey, I'm a small business, I'm a certified woman-owned small business. That's not a thing you can do, because you have to be SBA certified, small business, women-owned, disadvantaged, whatever it might be.
And we can help with all that too.
Yes, that is definitely Michelle. So get certified. And so then I would call them and I would say, hey, I'm a certified women-owned small business. Do you have opportunities? A lot of them have subcontracting. So you have to get listed as a vendor for them. And then once you're in their vendor database, then you can see the opportunities. What the NASA vendor database does for me, so NASA has its own small business office. This is another secret that you should know. You can reach out to any NASA facility, most big federal facilities, and ask to speak to their small business representative or small business office. They almost all have at least one or a whole team of humans who's dedicated to making sure that they give small business a chance. And so what'll happen is, like for me, I actually signed on to the NASA Small Business Office vendor database, which is the post that you saw, Michelle. And so what that does is I can tick a little box that says I'm available as a subcontractor. And that way, any prime contractor who says, man, I really need a leadership training team, and I don't have one I like, or I don't like the last one I had, they can actually go out and look at all of my information and just call me. I don't have to pitch them. I don't have to go chase it. Now, I don't know how often that'll happen, but it's at least an opportunity. It gives me a chance to say that, or if they say, hey, are you in the small business vendor database for NASA, I can say, yes, here's my credentials.
That's a really good point, because I don't think that people realize that. That is an excellent tip. And it's really knowing who you would like to work with and doing it proactively, as opposed to maybe being more reactive and waiting for something to show up in like a sam.gov. I wanted to mention one other thing that Rachel had talked about was being certified as a woman-owned small business. There are some new regulations and processes that are being put in place. Now, I believe they're supposed to start in July. We haven't gotten any clarity on that. Yeah, I think it's gonna, but right now it's really more of a self-certification. There's various levels of certification. And again, you can talk to our office anytime to learn more about those, but there is going to be a more clarified and structured process with women-owned small businesses. And if you are, and a women-owned small business is defined as 51% or more female. So that's where it's like, if you would like to, as we get going, we will be doing some webinars and trainings on that process once that is live and out there. So we've just been getting some guidance on that, of how that's going to roll out, but not any exact processes yet, but just know it's out there, but it's very important. And again, if you're considering working with the federal government and pitching some of the contracts like Rachel's talking about, these are things that are very important, just like being certified as a veteran. And there's some other, components here. So anyways, just keep that in mind, that that's going to be coming, but it's a very important metric to include. And, once you get these certifications, make sure you're talking about them on your website, on your LinkedIn profile, on anywhere online, any of these digital platforms, because you never know who might be looking at your profile and all of a sudden see it's like, oh, women owned, excellent. I need that. Oh, look at, she's in this database. Oh, this is, and suddenly you've got someone contacting you for a potential project.
Yeah, in fact, I was working with a private company, and I had reached out to him, the CEO, and he kind of, he did some due diligence. He looked at our website and our LinkedIn profiles to kind of check out who we were, because I just cold emailed him. So
right,
I didn't know him. And he set an appointment, we chatted about his challenges and how we could help. And he said that, so I always ask, like, I send a lot of these emails out and I never hear back. So what about what I said in my email caught your attention or grabbed your interest? And he said, well, the first thing was something in the email. But then he said, when I visited your website, the fact that you're a women-owned small business really struck me. He's in manufacturing and he has over 50% of his staff as women, which is really unusual. And so he really is focused on gender equality. So that was a huge plus for him. And so, like you said, like, who would guess in manufacturing, they don't have a requirement. They don't have to do it. They don't even necessarily talk about it. But this particular CEO, that's one of the reasons that talked him into reaching out.
I love it. And that's good. And it's a reminder too, that people, once we make that connection, whether it's a cold call, cold pitch, whatever, where do they go? They go online to check our credibility, to check out if we're legit. They're going to go to your website. They're going to go to your LinkedIn profile. I am a huge proponent of LinkedIn. That's how I saw Rachel's update. Now, again, I follow Rachel on Facebook and I've been to their website, but LinkedIn is somewhere that I think as professionals, it's so important to have a LinkedIn profile out there and just get out there a couple times a week and see what's happening within your network, because other people are looking at your profile as well. And I'm sure that that other potential clients have checked you out, Rachel, as well, just to see like, hey, oh, and then they start to see your background, your expertise that they had no idea about. And
when I connect people, like now I'll say, well, okay, Nate, I know Nate from Cleveland. He does a thing that Derek from Boulder wants, can maybe support each other. I include your LinkedIn profile. So I say, Nate, here's Derek. Derek does this. Here's his LinkedIn profile, because I know that's where they're going to go. So you might as well just help them out and give them their direct link. And I was working with a woman who wants a new job, wants a more professional job. And I said, what does your LinkedIn profile look like? She doesn't have one. I said, then you don't exist, not in the professional world. Have to have it, be out there and be active.
Right. So what was your biggest takeaway is and now that especially since you've been in sam.gov before, but now you're really, focused on moving Rose Group maybe to more federal contracting, maybe NASA, maybe other agencies. What's kind of been your biggest takeaway or what you've learned through the process so far?
I think the biggest takeaway that I've had is to play. You have to play the game. So there's a lot of me, like I looked at applying for 8A, an 8A exception or an 8A status, and just the process of that is, I don't know, I'm sure you know about it, Michelle. I don't know if you've actually gone through the application.
I have not gone through the application, but I know it is, it's thick.
Unbelievable. Anyway, and at the end of the day, a lot of this feels very bureaucratic. It feels very a huge overhead. It feels a lot of work. But at the end of the day, it's about, they're really trying to protect your tax dollars. They're trying to protect from, one giant company running the entire thing. They're trying to making sure everyone has a fair shake. And so you really just have to figure out the game. I've always said is that companies that are making wildly more money than me, there's no one in that organization that's smarter. They just know how to play the game better. And so I think that's a real key is to, talk to Michelle and the SBA about how to play the game. Talk to the small business office at the federal facility that you want to work in and find out how to play that game locally. Who is their contracting officer? Who do they hire? Now that COVID has happened and is happening, there's a lot more attention to local. So I was so frustrated last year because there was a leadership development and training at Camp Rapid, and they gave it to a company out of Texas. I didn't give it. They awarded the contract to a company out of Texas. And I thought, I am 50 miles away. What are you doing? But I did not have the past performance credibility to get that contract. So but I think there will be more focus on how far away are you coming? I've gone and done live trainings already, and they all want to know, how far have you traveled? Where have you been? Have you been in contact with anyone in mass groups of people that you're not sure their health care? So I think now is the time to really be thinking about how to strategically position yourself, especially if you're a veteran and you have military experience. I cannot tell you how many contracts I wish I could apply for, but they require you to be a veteran. So if you are a veteran, definitely you should be looking at this kind of work.
And that's just to do another pitch for one of our SBA resource partners is VBOC of the Dakotas. And what we'll do is in the Facebook post, we'll put Rachel's contact information, we'll put my contact information, as well as VBOC of the Dakotas information as well, because those are all key resources to help you and to guide you. And to help you to be more successful. And I love just going back, Rachel, is positioning yourself. Even if you have not gone through all the process to be able to be contracted or do contracting, it's positioning yourself. And I think too, with the situation that we're in now in this, COVID world, people are asking different questions of businesses. What type of opportunities can you provide virtually, to our staff? Because maybe my staff is working from home. Maybe my staff is across the nation. Maybe my staff is, I don't want them to travel anywhere. Maybe, there's these other ideas and things. So positioning yourself just to provide some virtual training. Also love just, that federal facility, going there and making connections, and remembering that we can't do everything online. Picking up the phone and calling someone isn't it surprising when sometimes our phone rings and we're like, oh my gosh, someone's calling me. Well, now I have found that, I can connect with people much better by just calling it, and just having a conversation. So we kind of need to get back into that because we might not be able to see people in person. And just considering also the certifications we talked about, women-owned business, veteran-owned, and really just, where do you want to go next with your business? And considering to think a little bit bigger. And perhaps you haven't thought about the federal government as a potential client. So Rachel, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your knowledge. We at SDCEO are incredibly grateful for Rose Group International support, and we love having you and your co-founder, Meg Mankey, as our speakers. Very excited about our event next week, and to have you both on board again. And you know what? We're doing it virtually. We're not stopping it from happening, but we're doing it virtually, and we're pivoting just like everyone else. So again, thank you so much, Rachel. I will put Rachel's contact information in the Facebook. Thanks everyone for following along. And I've had a couple of comments, and mostly it was just like, hey, awesome.
Hi, everybody.
And, you know, and I'll throw out there again that as a small business administration resource partner, SDCEO is here to help you succeed. We can help plug you in to get to see if federal contracting is right for you. We can help when certification comes across our board and our desk of what those new rules are. Please be in contact with me and look into, we're going to be doing some webinars and trainings and all those other kind of things. We also do free one-on-one business advising. So if you are interested in launching a business, perhaps this is the time you're taking a step back and saying, hey, I'm ready to do this. Or if you have a business right now and you're ready to have that grow and maybe pivot, maybe put some more things online, we are here to help you. So you can contact me, set that up. Thank you, Rachel, for being here. And we're going to do this again. So this was really great. So everyone have a fantastic weekend. Thanks again, Rachel.
Yep. Bye.